Hello and welcome to this special program where we answer your queries on the coronavirus. Now, this is a battle that the world has been fighting for some time now, and yet this is an ever-changing battle. In fact, the top medical watchdog in the United States, the CDC, has added new symptoms of the novel coronavirus to a list of existing ones. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, which tracks diseases globally and whose officials are directly involved in advanced laboratory work, has now added new symptoms of COVID-19 on its website. They say people with COVID-19 have a wide range of symptoms reported, and these range from mild to severe illnesses. But these symptoms could appear between 2 to 14 days after exposure to the virus. So what has the CDC talked about? Well, the new symptoms include chills, repeated shaking with chills, muscle pain, headaches, a new loss of taste or smell. Now, these symptoms are not among the ones that were listed on the World Health Organization's webpage. Those are just fever, dry cough, tiredness, aches and pains, nasal congestion, sore throat and diarrhea. So these symptoms now being added to that list, and the CDC still points out that these symptoms are not all-inclusive, that people must consult doctors for any other symptoms that are severe or that they are worried about or that are concerning to them. So we'll try and talk a little more to our medical experts this morning about this. We're being joined by Dr. Prabhakar Koregol. He's a consultant interventional cardiologist with Fortis Hospital, Bengaluru. If we can, in fact, have Dr. Prabhakar with us. Very good morning, Dr. Prabhakar. If we can talk a little about these new symptoms that the US's CDC is talking about. Now, we knew of the certain set of symptoms which included sore throat, coughing, fever, etc. But now we're seeing chills, shaking or trembling being added to this, muscle pain, a new loss of smell or taste. So if you could tell us a little more about these, and in your experience, have patients complained of this?
Yeah, good morning. As it happens with any viral infections, it will have one dominant system which it affects. Like in the coronavirus case, it's a respiratory system. So the classical symptoms that were described so far are the ones which occur in majority of the patients. But at the same time, viruses can infect other systems as well. So now we are coming up and seeing the patients who have gut symptoms, that is the abdominal pain, diarrhea, vomiting, and also you have these patients coming with the skin changes, dermatological manifestations in the foot, and certain of the neurological and cardiac manifestations as well.
Right. That's very interesting that you mentioned the dermatological changes of the foot. In fact, we've seen those photographs, and there have been reports, media reports of this also. Now, in your opinion, are there people who are particularly prone to these things, or does the virus just have different manifestations in different people?
As per whatever the information we have so far, it looks like virus just does have different manifestations, which happens with any other viral infections also.
Right.
But number-wise, what we have seen is it's more common in the younger people, children's, and it's more common in the people who already have some dermatological issues.
I see. So, Doctor, I guess the question on everybody's minds right now is, if these symptoms are always changing and if people have such differing symptoms also, then how are they to ever make a self-diagnosis? And at what point should they reach out for medical help?
For atypical symptoms, it's very difficult to make a self-diagnosis. As for the patients, we can always say this is a typical symptom and you look at this and make a self-diagnosis. And whenever there's a pandemic or epidemic going on, any symptom should be viewed with a suspicion of being related to the epidemic and pandemic if it's not a routine symptom for you. So anything that is unusual, anything that is new, one should consult the doctor.
All right, let's go across to the first caller. Joining us on the phone line from Pune is Prem Ananthraman. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I would like to know the procedure of plasma therapy.
Okay. Good morning, Prema. Plasma therapy is still an experimental therapy. We would not say that it is the treatment that has been established. As of now, we are doing it because there is no other viable option. Plasma therapy, to put it in a simple terms, is like a blood transfusion. The plasma from a patient who is recovered from the coronavirus infection is taken and it is given like a blood transfusion through the IV infusion. Generally, it varies from the institute to institute, but about 200 ml of plasma is transfused one after the another, 2 consecutive samples.
All right, Prem, I hope that answered your question adequately. As we wait for our next caller, Dr. Koregaul, I'd also like to ask you about these specific symptoms that are now being talked about. When we talk about chills or shaking with chills, what does that exactly imply? I mean, would this be similar to the shivering that one gets, for instance, when one has malaria? How is one to know exactly what a chill is? Is it just a feeling of being cold? How would you describe it?
Yeah, we have 3 components for the fever. One is the feeling of the heat or the fever itself. Then, whenever the fever starts subsiding or going into, you take some medications, you develop this coolness and the shaking of the body because of the muscles. So that being the, it will be like a malaria-like only, but generally viral infections cause lesser amount of shakiness and the chills in comparison to the malaria. Malaria causes very severe rigors and chills.
Right. We do have another caller on the phone line with us. We're being joined by Anthony from Puducherry. Anthony, go ahead with your question.
Good morning, sir. This is Anthony from Pondicherry. Sir, actually, a person affected by the coronavirus came to dead means. What will happen to the virus? I mean, you were not allowed it for the, at the time of cremation, you were not allowed more persons. So
right.
What will happen to the virus?
Okay, I think it's these are reports that are disturbing us all. Incidents of people who are not allowing cremations to go ahead and are worried about infection and contagion from dead bodies. So, why is that the case, Doctor?
Mr. Anthony, as of now, whatever the information we have, the transmission of coronavirus is through the respiratory fomites. That is when somebody coughs, somebody breathes heavily in a very enclosed environment. So there's no question of a dead man doing any of these. And yes, contact, like before the body is buried or disposed, the people who are gone to touch the body are likely to contract the infection. That is why there are certain specific modalities. But when in a sanitized model with sodium hypochlorite being used as a sanitizer, when the body is buried, after that, we don't have any evidence of infection being spread or infection surviving in the grave or something like that, that somebody contracts it at a later stage. So I don't think somebody has to be worried about allowing somebody being buried or in a normal grave or in the whatever the places they are usually buried. So the viruses will get destroyed once they get into the inanimate tissue.
All right. Nelson is joining us from Kanyakumari this morning. Nelson, go ahead.
Yes, madam. I just wanted to ask that here we are getting many videos and all regarding inhalation of steam, whether that will help or not. And another two questions are whether cigarette smoking, anything, whether it is helping or not. And last one is whether any inhalers are there so that the respiratory means this COVID viruses it will help in killing the virus.
Nelson, thank you. We got your questions, and I think that's an interesting point that you bring up, because a French study which is now being shared constantly on social media talks about how smokers were detected with fewer cases than non-smokers, at least as far as France was concerned. Medically, is there any backing to this? No doubt there'll be a lot of such studies, and people will interpret it in the way they like. But Dr. Koregaul, what is your view on this?
Yeah, Mr. Nelson. My first question is no to all 3 questions that you put across. See, there is always what is called causal relation. That is, it has like a direct cause to the disease or the cure. The other is an association. Whatever study we have regarding the smoking is only an association, And we cannot give importance to it saying that smoking protects the people from the coronaviruses. So it's a very clear no to the smoking. Coming to your other questions like steam inhalation, use of inhaler, it comes to maintaining what we call as a respiratory hygiene. Suppose if you get, you would have noticed when you lose sleep, when you are not hygienic, when you are not taking a proper diet, your likelihood of catching the respiratory infection increases. So those respiratory hygienes, if maintained, like maintaining your throat gargling or steam inhalation, will reduce the chances of contracting the infection, but it doesn't do anything to the person who is already contracted the infection. And there are no inhalers specific for coronavirus. But suppose if somebody is using an inhaler for some health issues, they can continue to use it without the fear.
All right, thank you for that, Doctor. On a larger question, now we're seeing the government also talking about sort of easing of restrictions. India is already divided into green, orange and red zones. Now, in the red zones, presumably the lockdown is still going to be very strictly enforced beyond the 3rd of May as well. But in green zones where there are fewer or no cases now for a significant length of time, restrictions will gradually be eased. What is this going to mean in terms of what people should personally be doing in green zones? How should they continue to socially distance? Should they continue to wear masks? What are the best practices that everyone should be following?
Though politically incorrect, I would like to make two statements before I answer this question. One is green zone, orange zone and red zone is in terms of the number of the patients being there or number of new cases being detected. But this doesn't reflect the whole scenario because we have lots of asymptomatic carriers and such of those people walking around. And all that you need is one person who has an infection to come in contact with you to infect you. We don't need a whole lot of people to be infected. So even if the complete curve of lockdown occurs, for next couple of months until when we are sure of no community transmission, we'll have to wear the masks. All of us, a medical mask is preferable with 3-ply, then maintain the social distance, avoid all unnecessary travel and touching of the objects and stairwells and doorknobs and everything, and frequently wash your hands. This, whatever has been applied so far, has to be continued whether there is a lockdown or not.
All right, thank you for that. We have our next caller. Antonio is calling us from Delhi. Antonio, go ahead.
Can I speak to the doctor now?
Yes.
Sir, I heard about oxygenated blood being sent into a COVID patient and cures him. How is that possible, sir? Is that possible? I heard of that.
No. See, one of the major problems with the COVID patients is a low oxygen. Their lungs are not able to extract the oxygen and use it. So whenever there's a scenario like that, what we call as a severe respiratory failure, we have got the support systems in the form of ventilator. What you are talking probably refers to something like an ECMO or ECMO equivalence. But we don't have many cases wherein the ECMO has been used in patients with a coronavirus that has been reported so far. But it is possible to send an oxygenated blood to the coronavirus infected patients or any patients on respiratory failure by doing what we call as a extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. Like your lung is not able to extract the oxygen, you have a machine outside which provides the oxygen to the blood, and that blood recirculates in the patient's body. It's not a specific treatment for coronavirus, but it's a treatment of respiratory failure.
All right. Dr. Korigal, one other thing that's been talked about quite a lot now in recent days is whether the oral polio vaccine can actually have any effect on COVID-19, whether it can prevent or slow the spread of COVID-19. Now, of course, we heard about the BCG vaccine. Now it's the oral polio vaccine. Presumably, a lot of existing medicines and vaccines are being looked at to see if they can be repurposed. So, is there any basis to research about oral polio vaccine?
See, all possible modalities, yes, there's a role of research and look at it if it has any positive impact. But whatever we have so far regarding any vaccine or any other protective mechanisms that we talk about, whether it's a vaccine, whether it's BCG vaccine or temperature, everything is only presumptive. We still don't have a very conclusive evidence of it being working, except for looking at the COVID vaccines.
All right. Dr. Ramesh is calling us from Mysuru. Dr. Ramesh, go ahead.
Good morning to both.
Good morning.
I would like to know during the plasma therapy whether the blood group has to be taken into consideration and what is the usual procedure for this?
Yeah, very good question, Dr. Ramesh. Yes, as of now, ABO compatibility is considered to be one of the components in most of the written research protocols. Actually, strictly speaking, plasma therapy can be done in an ABO mismatch in certain blood group patients, but as of today, the ABO compatibility is considered as a must in majority of the protocols because we don't want any adverse reaction related to the incompatible blood transfusion. So as far as the procedure is concerned, the ABO compatibility of the donor is done. Donor is selected either a cured patient after 14 days where the serology is negative or the swabs are negative, or after 28 days of clinical cure without any tests also. Then the blood is collected from the donor and plasmapheresis and done a separated plasma is transfused into the patient in 2 settings in majority of the protocols. That is how the process is done. So ABO matching is must, just like any blood transfusion matching.
Right. We're almost out of time right now. So is there any final comments, Dr. Koregaul, that you'd like to make, any final advice that you'd like to give our viewers this morning?
One thing I would like to say is coronavirus, yes, though is scary and doing lots of havoc across the globe, we have been able to control it well and manage it well. With most of the people, it's going to behave like a simple viral infection without causing the death. You don't have to be worried, like I hear people jumping out of the window because they develop a coronavirus. So you don't have to be scared so much, but taking all the protective measures as much as possible, just the barriers, they are the only proven methods, and we'll wait for the vaccine and the other therapies to come into the realm, which should soon come in, and we should all be protected.
Thanks so much for that. I'm going to try and squeeze in one last caller. Prashant is joining us from Bhopal. Prashant, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Hi. My question is to the eminent doctor. Would the immunomodulators help in building up the immunity against COVID-19? One, and if yes, then at what stage should it be given?
There are people trying them. We still don't have a definitive evidence that they will definitely help because there's always a risk of flaring up of the infection also. There are people who have a research which has varied this thing to telling that it will help. And again, since most of the modalities are tried only in the severe cases, we still don't definitely know whether we should start earlier than when they have a respiratory failure. As of now, they are trying it when the patients progress from at least moderate or moderate to severe, because these being the experimental therapies.
All right. I think we leave it at that for today. Thanks very much indeed, Dr. Koregaul, for joining us on the show and answering a range of questions from both medical practitioners and lay people out there, and indeed all our questions on the newly listed symptoms. Thanks for watching. Do join us again tomorrow.